Hello and welcome to From Beyond. I'm Joey Travolta. In 1974, unexplainable scratches appear on a boy's body. He breaks out in violent fits and sometimes speaks in an ancient language he could not possibly know. Are demons just a natural occurrence, or are they really creatures from beyond?
Therefore, accursed dragon, prince of darkness, I adjure thee by the living God, by the true God, by the holy God, to cease thy deception of men and thy giving them to drink of the poison of eternal damnation. Desist from harming the church and fettering her freedom. Get thee gone, Satan, founder and master of all falsity, enemy of mankind. Give place to Christ, in whom thou didst find none of thy works. Give place to the one, holy, and apostolic church, which Christ himself brought with his blood. Be thou brought under God's mighty hand. Tremble and flee as we call upon the holy and awesome name of Jesus, before whom hell trembles, and to whom the virtues, powers, and dominations are subject to. They praise with unfailing voices, saying, Sanctus, Sanctus, Sanctus Dominus Deus Sabaoth. Possession, the idea that some force, good or evil, can invade a soul and overpower it. We have buried the primitive fright of possession under layers of logic and science. In our world, it is the stuff of nightmares. But in ancient times, possession was an everyday reality, a belief shared by everyone in the community. At the time of Christ, popular belief was that demons caused mental illness. The power to cast out those demons was a great power, just as it is today. Another form of possession appeared among Jews in medieval Europe, the belief that a dead soul could enter a living body. In Christian accounts, the possessor is one of the devil's legion of demons, or the devil himself. They are the fallen angels, divinely created beings who through pride, envy, and finally despair, turned against God. Since possession and mental illnesses such as schizophrenia share a lot of the same signs, the Catholic Church wrote a book on the very subject to determine a real possession from a mental problem. First published in 1614, the Ritual Romanum, or the official book of Catholic rituals, is based on rituals that go back as far as the 1st century. In it, it states that someone who is truly possessed will have the ability to speak with some facility in a strange tongue, or understand it when spoken by another, the faculty of divulging future or hidden events, and a display of powers which are beyond the subject's age and natural condition. Possession, wrote a Catholic theologian, consists of the devil within the human body, over which the devil has total control. The victim becomes a blind instrument for his work. Since the possessed person is not aware of his or her actions during a diabolical seizure, and much less able to exercise any control, the victim of possession is not responsible for his or her actions, however outrageous, wicked, or perverse. But some possessions aren't unwilling ones. For instance, devil worshippers or Satanists, people who practice the dark arts, may willingly want to be possessed by a demon, or even the devil himself. In a demonic ritual, the willing possessee must first bow obedience and subjection to the hands of the devil. Then they pay homage, often obscene in nature, and lay their hands upon a large black book. They bind themselves by blasphemous oaths, never to return to the true faith of God, to observe no holy God, to do no good work, but only to obey the devil and attend without fail the nightly rituals. Sexual acts and even orgies ensue, with each member of the group taking part. The devil must be given something in order to grant his possession to a member of the group. Thus, sacrifice, usually animal, but sometimes human, can and does take place. The most famous literal account of someone invoking the devil into his own body would be that of occultist Aleister Crowley. In part of his account, his intent was to call the mighty demon of the abyss, named Choronzon, the most deadly of all the powers of evil. According to Crowley's partner, Choronzon manifested itself in Crowley and took on many forms. First as a beautiful naked woman who attempted to seduce him, then as an old man, then as a hideous snake who almost bit his throat, and lastly as in the form of the demon himself. Until the day he died, Crowley's partner was convinced that he had fought with the demon, and the experience remained deeply etched in his soul.
When a demon has successfully ascended from hell, it will attempt to wreak havoc on the living.
The victim of possession shows many signs. They may start hearing voices, voices that tell him or her to hurt themselves, hurt others, or maybe even kill. They may exhibit scratches on the body. Words or sentences may erupt from their skin, in blood or scars. When they speak, there may be more than one voice that comes out, and of those voices, various languages may emerge. In the words of a saved possessed victim, "I find it almost impossible to explain what happens to me during this time, how this demonic spirit is united to mine, without depriving me of consciousness or of inner freedom, and yet constituting a second me, as though I had two souls. I feel as if I had been pierced by the pricks of despair in that alien soul which seems to be mine. I even feel that the cries uttered by my mouth come from both souls at once, and I find it hard to determine whether they are the product of joy or frenzy." Thus, a home has no soul. The devil has no soul. Only a person has a soul, and it is that unique commodity, that key to immortality that the demonic seeks to possess, if only to destroy it. For this reason, major exorcism of the possessed is not a passive blessing, but an active expulsion of spirit entities that will not leave unless properly commanded to do so. When a person is truly possessed, it's like their very souls are being molested by an evil spirit, and the victim's entire world is thrown into a frightening chaos.
What do you want? What do you want from me? How could you get out? How could you? Answer me. You can't be here. You can't!
Inhuman spirits have roamed the earth since the beginning of time, so there's nothing new about that. What is new is the situation we are witnessing in the 20th century. There are two basic reasons why excessive negative activity is taking place these days. One reason has to do with numbers. There are more people in the world now than ever before in history. A great many of these people are dissatisfied with life, alienated from religion, or seeking after extraordinary knowledge. Concurrently, never in history has so much profane, negative information been available to everyone. In the past, this information was secret knowledge, used by some of the most wicked people who ever lived. Today, much of it is printed in books and sold like candy. This information is the real thing, and a gullible person who decides to use it for personal ends is quite capable of bringing about infestation, oppression, or possession by inhuman spirits. So essentially, we have a very large literate population with 24-hour-a-day access to really horrendous information. All that's needed is the desire, the wrong motivation to use it. From there, it's a very short step to bringing on the demonic. The other reason we're getting so much negative spirit activity has to do with people's lack of mystical knowledge. Spontaneous assaults initiated by the demonic are extremely rare. In the 19th and 20th centuries, the clear majority of demonic activity has been instigated by people. It boils down to the fact that demonic phenomena is a people problem. It's people who open doors to the underworld through their own free will. So while millions of people are playing with fire by dabbling in the occult, other quasi-religious cults operate in America, some of which invoke negative spirits to assist them as guides through life. Toward the even blacker extreme, other groups are actively engaged in ritual black witchcraft, not to mention the Satanists, who avowedly prefer the ass of Satan to the face of Jesus. But what would the ultimate danger be in dealing with the demonic? On the transitory level, the life you live would not be your own, but instead one directed by another. Throwing your will open to the demonic is to allow yourself to be its stooge. The ultimate danger, though, would be to allow your human spirit to absorb the reprehensible, blasphemous characteristics of the demonic. The enemy of being, for when this happens, the individual runs the potential risk of sharing the fate of these spirits of darkness. Separation from the source of being, the demonic spirit is a corruption of nature, a spirit of destruction that rather than affirming life, exists to destroy it. As a human being, we can either choose to be a part of the problem or part of the solution.
When a victim is completely possessed, he will perform any action the demon wishes.
When possession occurs, the person's facial characteristics change into a bony, distorted appearance, totally unlike the normal appearance of the possessed person. The voice that comes through is often gross and manlike. Although you can't generalize, many demons usually partake in the possession of the body, each with its own bizarre way of coming through the victim. As for changes of the body, the strength of a possessed person is completely overwhelming, as the demon tries to mutilate the body it inhabits, or the bodies of people trying to help. As portrayed in the movie The Exorcist, the demon isn't content simply to possess the body. Its mind is fixed on death. The basic motive behind possession is that one can kill many. It doesn't matter if the diabolically possessed is a tyrannical world leader or a street killer. The object is the same. One can kill many. When we begin to understand this basic truth, the demonic spirit's entire strategy starts to make sense. So when possession occurs, the inhuman spirit no longer attacks its victim. It becomes its victim. It defies anything and anyone who will attempt to make it leave.
Things happen. All according to instincts. There ain't no stations. Stations. None. So, gotta do you gotta do.
Demonical influence can be sickeningly ugly. When a person succumbs to the impulses thrown out by the demonic, and those impulses are usually the most negative and bestial, the spirit can have the victim wallowing around on the floor like an animal, or lashing out at others with intent to harm or even kill. Why? Because the demonic is inhuman, and when it possesses people, it dehumanizes them, to the point where human life is something to scorn and mutilate. This is why successful demonic possession can turn a human being into something even lower than the devil himself. But there are more reasons these inhuman spirits wish to possess a human body, mainly because these demons are suffering. Yes, suffering. For the demonic spirit is driven to possession for two reasons. First, their realm, call it hell, is so intolerable that these spirits will do anything to escape it. These spirits not only torment people, they torment one another in hell. Their only way out is to possess a human body. And when a person can be possessed by one entity, he can be possessed by many. In fact, possession by many entities isn't the exception, it's the rule. The second, grander reason for possession is based on the Antichrist concept. The whole effort of the inhuman spirit is dedicated to this end, to seize the earth and destroy mankind in front of the eyes of God. So, through possession, the devil kills two birds with one stone. It hides out and gets away from hell. Plus, it does its work of ruining God's earth and mankind. Ultimately, the demonic spirit has a far more poignant sense of hell than physical punishment. These spirits know that they are doomed to eternal punishment, meaning the demonic spirit, the carrier of the plague of evil, will be deducted away from the natural universe, or as the Bible puts it, the wicked shall perish. Yet rather than change, it elects to be what it is, wicked and evil. These spirits have created their own fiery hell, insofar as their existence is the antithesis of the positive. One could say that hell and all its torments is actually these inhuman spirits' own doing. Consequently, on an intellectual level, belief in demonic possession makes more sense when seen as it is an eternal separation from God. That is, separation from the source of being, altogether complete and peaceful. But humans aren't always unwilling victims. Sometimes we grant a sort of permission so that a spirit can enter one's life. Doors must be opened for the phenomenon of possession to occur. In everyday terms, the demonic spirit does not have free reign over man. Instead, through the exercise of free will, men and women sometimes choose to open the door to the unknown, and then, unfortunately, follow the darkened path. The demon is a spirit that people don't have to know. Specifically, it's a matter of need versus want. A ghost needs to communicate its own problem, or it visits as an apparition to give information that a living person may need to know. But the demonic spirit is different. It's there because people, through their own free will, want or invite spirit contact when there's absolutely no need for it. With respect to this, two laws apply: the law of attraction and the law of invitation. The premise of the law of attraction is like attracts like. Attention to the positive brings about the positive, and attention to the negative brings about the negative. Therefore, people who do negative or evil and unnatural things are essentially doing the devil's work for him, and therefore actually attract negative spirits to their side. They're on the same frequency, so to speak. As an extension of the law of attraction, the demonic can also be brought in as a result of one's actions. Characteristically, wanton transgressions of the good, evil deliberately perpetrated by man against man, is a triumph of evil, and acts as a signal to negative spirits. When an individual derives satisfaction from committing cruel and malicious acts, his body vibration alters, resulting in an aura that is darker than normal in color. As a shark follows a trail of blood, The change in aura then attracts a negative spirit to one's side. Now, by the law of invitation, it's a simple ask and ye shall receive formula. An individual can deliberately summon the demonic through a ritual or via some channel of sincere communication. This is an open voluntary gesture involving ceremonial magic, incantations, seances, use of the Ouija board, or secret profane rituals where an individual voluntarily invites a demonic presence into himself. Conducting one of these rituals is often the first step down a road of no return. The conjuring may be a private affair, carried on in one's own home, or, as is the new fashion, to do it in public with one of the ever-growing cults of Satanists of covens of black witches who wantonly advocate this dangerous activity. In the past, the negative rituals involved everything from the murder of babies to pacts with the devil himself. In the more extreme rituals, celebrants would turn the Bible upside down and urinate on it, then begin a counterclockwise march, forming a black circle while chanting blasphemies, renunciations of God, and submissions to the other lord, Satan. Using profane rituals, Satanists and black witches are able to summon specific demonic spirits and command them to commit actions for either personal or group benefit. Money, prestige, material riches, power. All these things and more can come from the help of a demonic spirit. But the demon is a loan shark of sorts, and it not only collects before you're ready, it wants double in return for what it gives. Ultimately, it wants the soul. That's why sorcerers, black witches, and Satanists will wind up having a big price, an eternal price for what they do.
Their lives shall thus be avenged.
I cast thee out, thou unclean spirit, along with the least encroachment of the wicked enemy, and every phantom and diabolical legion. In the name of the Lord Jesus Christ, depart and vanish from this creature of God. For it is he who commands thee, he who ordered thee cast down from the heights of heaven into the nethermost pit of earth. Quake and fly afar, as we call upon the name of the Lord, before whom hell trembles, to whom the heavenly virtues and powers and dominions are subject, whom the cherubim and seraphim praise with unending voice, as they sing, Holy, 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 Lord God of hosts. Exorcism is not a battle, but a war. And this war is only won when the demon abandons the individual, because it can no longer endure exposure to all that is opposite of itself. That is, goodness and holiness. When the exorcist steps in, he confronts the real thing, the beast, Beelzebub, the devil. And after the exorcism is complete, the possessed victim is freed from the demonic spirit. That, by its own admission, seeks to dominate man and bring about his total ruin and destruction. No exorcist ever comes away from a confrontation with the awful one unscathed. He forever remains alone, apart from other people, feeling the sting and biting hate the devil reserves for God. That is the true nature of the exorcism.
And the Lord have mercy on his soul. Happy damn. Satan is evil. And where evil is, there is no place for the cross.
Without interference, the ritual Romanum exorcism previously discussed takes about 2 hours to recite. However, what occurs during the reading of the text becomes the ordeal. During an exorcism, the possessing entities put up strong resistance. No sooner does the exorcist begin reading the ritual than the spirits reply with a counter-assault, designed to stop the exorcism from going on. Usually it's a matter of wild screaming, hooting, or shouting by the entities in the person. The whinnying of horses, the barking of dogs, the snorting of pigs are typical stuff put out by the demonic to interrupt the ritual. The unworldly howling and baying is liable to go on for hours on end. To the exorcist, though, these bestial sounds are no more than a disturbing nuisance. Though one might expect the higher clergy to be the ones called upon to actually conduct a major exorcism, this is rarely the case. They are usually saintly, humble men who care deeply about people and their welfare. Usually they have no other title than monk, priest, rabbi, minister, or yogi, but they all seem to embody a combination of wisdom, kindness, and compassion that you don't see in ordinary people. They also understand that evil is something that no weapon can destroy. Only the weapon of love and goodness can do that.
But there's no more danger, Countess.
Beast is not dead.
I put 4 bullets into him.
You think evil can be killed with bullets? Satan lives.
The unholy one is among us.
As an exorcism progresses, the possessing entities usually pour forth vulgar, blasphemous language, crude, filthy gutter talk. Speaking in a gross, inhuman voice, these things will also challenge the scriptures being read, and sometimes even correct the exorcist, should he happen to omit a phrase or mispronounce some word in the ritual. These insults and slanderings will later change into a demoralizing personal assault directed against the priest or whoever is in charge of the exorcism. These spirits, you see, not only know the scriptures, they also know the life of everyone in the room. They try to drive the exorcist and his assistants away by bringing up hurtful incidents in these people's lives, recounting their personal tragedies with perverse delight. They reveal personal things that a person may feel terribly guilty about, or dredge up events that provoke great pain and sorrow. When that doesn't work, they'll humiliate each and every person present by reciting all their mortal sins in front of everyone, dwelling on those sins that are likely to be the most embarrassing to a particular person. When the personal attacks on the exorcist and his assistants prove to be insufficient to stop the exorcism, then incredible, frightening phenomena are liable to occur in cases where very powerful entities are involved. In these cases, the victim may levitate off the bed, have their hair yanked out by invisible hands, throw up gallons of putrid, disgusting substances, and be burned and slashed all over their body. We must bear in mind that the demon is not something that is dead. It is an active, negative intelligence that predates man in cosmic evolution. Until exorcism takes place, the body will be a house for one or more entities. Sometimes the devil will leave the possessed person, only to make it appear that he has departed. In fact, the arts and frauds of the evil one for deceiving man are innumerable. For this reason, the exorcist must be on his guard, lest he fall into a deadly trap. Even more frightening for the exorcist is the fact that the demon's ultimate purpose is to possess the exorcist. In fact, many believe that is the devil's main intention, his most important reason for possessing anyone. Unfortunately, many exorcists have given up their own souls to save the soul of the victim. It is not only an act of courage and selflessness, but an act of a truly holy man. But we must remember that dealing with a demonic spirit is a very grave, serious problem, and neither good intentions nor manly intolerance can drive it away. It backs off only in the name of God.
Coming to me, Satan. earth as it is in hell.
Many times,
Now,
the
anything-
possessed looks just like you
anything
or
that
me,
moves near that
except
door,
for
kill
one
it.
thing, the eyes. They say the eyes are the window to the soul, and the look of the possessed is like nothing most of us have ever seen. The eyes aren't dropping or half asleep. They're wide open and alert. Yet the look in those eyes is not human. It is wild, bestial, and full of hate. Ed Warren, a noted exorcist, states, "I have seen this crazed, otherworldly look many times in my life, and every time I seem to lose a small part of myself in the process. I'm convinced it is a look people are not supposed to see, because it is truly the spirit of evil looking out the window of a human being." Still, no matter how intense and irrational the phenomena might become, it is unthinkable that the exorcist would ever break during the process. Working in the interest of good, the exorcist and those around him must tend with repulsive physical phenomena that would make even the most hardened individual recoil in shock and disgust. But yet the exorcist endures and keeps on repeating the ritual over and over again, sometimes to the point of near death, until finally the possessing entities identify themselves and leave in the name of God. They must be guarding their own lives, as even their religious articles, while helpful, often cause various problems. The demonic spirit is actually moved to violence when exposed to religious articles, the recitation of prayers, or reference to God or Jesus Christ. Ironically, many people do not believe in God, but these spirits do. An exorcist has to touch evil, breathe it, focus on it. If an exorcist wavered with doubt or fear when he entered into the shadows of evil, he risks his own destruction, and perhaps that of the person he has been called on to save. As Mr. Warren has experienced, his last exorcism almost killed him. This case was almost the end of me, that's for sure. I found myself taken to a place out of this world that you'd never believe existed, even if I were to describe it. Every minute, every second of those long hours were so unbelievable, so incomprehensibly horrible, that I believe I now know the true meaning of hell, and more importantly, the value of life on earth. Most clinical thinkers today cling to the belief that diabolical possession is a purely psychological event, that there's no such thing as external entities, and that talk of spirits is simply ridiculous, considering that so much of the activity of the demon does have a psychological interlink. It is only fair to ask where psychology stands on the subject of demonic possession. Until roughly a century ago, all mental illness was treated as a sign of possession. Today, all possession is treated as a sign of severe mental illness. This drastic change from one absolute interpretation to another has done nothing to solve the ongoing problem of demonic influence. It has only resulted in a change of labels. Thus, in the past, an individual who displayed unseemly behavior was branded as possessed and locked away in an institution. Today, the possessed individual who also displays unseemly behavior is diagnosed as being mentally ill and once again locked in an institution. Unfortunately, the majority of people who complain about being possessed by spirits today really are mentally ill. But as we learned today, this isn't always the case. Psychology tends to see all cases of possession as being the manifestation of one or another type of mental disorder. The prevailing tendency is to diagnose such cases as paranoia, hysteria, or schizophrenia, because the outward symptoms of spirit possession are similar to textbook symptoms of neuroses and psychoses. Yet no matter how similar the overt symptoms, the cause of the problem is not the same. Rather, closer scrutiny of the possessed victim's individual complaints reveal that although his behavior may appear abnormal, he or she is functionally sane. All the victim is doing is reporting exactly what's happening to him or her. namely, that they are being harassed by external forces. However, because these external forces have long ago been exorcised from scientific literature, close scrutiny is rare, and so the spiritually afflicted individual gets put away in an institution instead. Dr. Jean Lermie, a French neurologist and medical examiner for the Catholic Church, notes, "Whatever suspects, unbelievers, and the ill-informed may think, demonopathic manifestations are not extinct. We still observe the phenomena which startled and alarmed our forefathers, but with a critical sense and knowledge they did not possess. But I must make clear that while the neurologist and the psychiatrist are qualified to discern and define an abnormal structure of the mind or some bodily disorder, they should remain physicians and not exceed their powers, so that in cases where mental illness is not clearly present, the neuropsychiatrists ought to call in the help and cooperation of the theologian."
Just a minute, Mildred. My name is John Harrington. I'm 30 years old. I am a paranoid. Paranoid. An enchanting word. So civilized and full of possibilities. The fact is, I am completely mad. The realization of which annoyed me at first, but is now amusing to me. Quite amusing. Nobody suspects that I am a madman, a dangerous murderer. Not Mildred, my wife, nor the employees of my fashion center, nor, of course, my customers. Poor little fly. Why are you so daring? You're so fragile. And yet you're born, you reproduce yourself, and you die like men. The difference is that you don't think, and you don't need to remember. You don't fear death because you ignore it. Your insignificant life is a mere biological accident. But death exists, I can assure you, and that is what makes life a ridiculous and brief drama.
But how can true cases of diabolical possession be differentiated from mental illness? The first and probably most significant distinction would be loss of self. Nowhere in psychology is loss of self considered to be a real factor in mental illness. Yet, in true cases of possession, the individual does experience the phenomenon of loss of self. What replaces the self or spirit of the human being is an entity totally independent of the person. The demonic spirit may either dislodge the human spirit or cohabit the body with the human spirit. Not only does the truly possessed individual experience a loss or displacement of self, there are additional symptoms that bear no relation whatever to classic psychological disorders. Another factor is metamorphosis. In other words, physical transformation of the face and body may occur. Again, this phenomenon is not a mental condition. People cannot grossly transform from one appearance to another unless possession is a factor. Exorcists have witnessed the possessed victim turn into a wolf, a pig, and even a gorilla. They have seen the possessed take on the features of the dead, as well as transform into things that could be described as macabre. And these changes are all physical. The skin and bones actually change their form, then recede back to normal once possession has passed. Besides loss of self and metamorphosis, a third factor unseen in cases of mental illness is the occurrence of distinctly supernatural phenomena in the vicinity of the possessed individual. In cases of possession, external, observable phenomena occur about 50% of the time. The activity tends to be of the order of levitation, teleportation, materialization, and dematerialization of physical objects. The demonic spirit brings about unnatural activity to prove to witnesses that inhuman powers are in effect. The distinction between mental illness and true diabolical possession is often as different as night and day. In our modern-day society, however, where psychiatry is a healing force, the psychiatrist is often the exorcist. Psychiatrists have offered several possible explanations for the demonic possession phenomenon. a specialist in multiple personality disorders, believes that an exorcist does essentially what a therapist tries to do: get rid of the entity that is inside the tortured patient. Many multiple personality patients think they are possessed by Satan himself. To them, every nerve can be a person. Usually, those nerve-ending persons are human personalities, and occasionally, the dweller within is a demon or Satan. Other psychiatrists have suggested Tourette's syndrome as the medical cause of possession. Victims of this disorder uncontrollably curse and scream, grunt and twitch, and may involuntarily shout obscenities. Some specialists say that Regan, the young girl under possession in The Exorcist, showed so many Tourette's symptoms that she resembled, in an exaggerated way, many of their patients. But we must take into account that Tourette's syndrome is, as of right now, an incurable disease. Still, even other doctors believe that possession is just a form of obsessive-compulsive disorder, a form of OCD long recognized by the Church and defined as habitual and unreasonable hesitation or doubt, coupled with anxiety of the mind in connection with making moral judgments. A psychiatrist a couple of decades ago may have treated someone with these symptoms with electric shock, thinking this was some form of schizophrenia or dementia. Frontal lobotomies were very common. They were performed upon people who acted aggressively or showed symptoms of extreme paranoia. Thankfully, these procedures are quite obscure today. Now, if it has been determined necessary to perform a major exorcism, Church authorities will have so judged after long and diligent deliberation that a human being has been possessed by that which calls itself a demon. This is no frivolous decision. In fact, before Church authorities will even contemplate an exorcism, the evidence for possession must be unchallengeable and overwhelming. For example, mere claims of hearing voices or hallucinations, or even depression, are not enough to justify an exorcism.
Do you hear those footsteps? Someone is tiptoeing inside my brain. Ooh, why do I hear those footsteps? John!
The individual under possession must be examined by a medical doctor, a psychiatrist, and a man of the cloth. Brain tumors, hormonal imbalances, and narcosis, for example, are just 3 of the many routine factors that can alter an individual, physically or mentally. Even if examinations, x-rays, and medical tests show the person to be physically sound, a psychiatric examination will be called for next. Abnormal psychology is tricky and complex, and the consulting psychiatrist is charged with determining whether or not the person is possessed or experiencing delusion, hallucination, multiple personality, or any of a variety of mental disorders that seem a lot like possession. While the individual's physical and psychological health are being checked out, Church authorities will assign a demonologist to the case. The demonologist is responsible for conducting an on-site investigation to determine the validity of any alleged case of possession. This investigation involves interviewing all persons related to the case, including the individual under possession, to learn if factors were present or actions were committed that could have permitted an inhuman spirit to inflict possession. Then the demonologist must witness the possession in order to assess the nature, power, and number of spirits involved, and if at all possible, attempt to learn the identity of the possessing entities.
I don't intend to leave you here alone for a week. Do you hear? Don't even bother dreaming about it. Are you listening? Not a week, not a day, not even a minute. I'll always be here at your side, whether you like it or not. Always, always.
For a demonologist, possession is not a medieval belief or an ancient tool to scare people. It is a reality. A demonologist believes that a person who has truly come under possession by the demonic will only be healed and saved through an exorcism. But it is not simply the body that the demon takes into bondage, but ultimately the soul, the metaphysical essence of the human being. If we want to understand why exorcism is necessary, then we've got to understand what man has got going for himself. He's got life, he's got free will, and he's got that touch of grace we call soul. The life and free will partly belong to man, but theoretically the soul belongs to God. So to use an analogy, the soul is like a relic of God that man's been given and told not to lose. But along comes the demonic spirit that sees man as a hateful image of God, and so it attacks the soul, for no other reason than spite, to withhold it from God as a show of force. Therefore, positive supernatural power is required to undo the spiritual catastrophe of possession. The devil respects no man. Therefore, this disruption of the natural order can be rectified only by a properly ordained clergyman or demonologist, who functions as a direct representative of God. In Christian denominations, every ordained Christian clergyman is a potential exorcist, because Christ was an exorcist. Moreover, scriptures indicate Jesus passed on this power to exorcise the demonic from the body of man to the disciples, using these words recorded in chapter 10 of the Gospel of St. Luke. He who hears you hears me, and he who rejects you rejects me. Behold, I have given you power to tread upon serpents and scorpions, and over all the might of the enemy, and nothing shall hurt you. But do not rejoice in this, that the spirits are subject to you. Rather rejoice in this, that your names are written in heaven.
I'm your host, Joey Travolta. Thank you for watching From Beyond.